I'm Joe Marchinchin, Corporate Agronomist for Turf Care Supply Company. On behalf of all of us at Turf Care Supply, we'd like to welcome you to Fertilizers 101, an instructional video created to introduce you to the science and terminology behind fertilizers, soil amendments, and control products. Whether you're new to the fertilizer, turf grass, plant nutrition, or landscaping industries, or simply need a refresher course on these topics, you've come to the right place. Throughout this presentation, we will learn the fundamentals of and terminologies associated with fertilizers, soil amendments, and control products, learn the principles of ideal soil characteristics, and learn how to read and understand fertilizer control labeling language. By the end of this presentation, you should have a solid foundation for the kinds of fertilizer, soil amendment, and control products on the market and how they can be used with maximum efficiency to obtain beautiful turf grass, ornamentals, and other green landscapes. Let's get started. What exactly is fertilizer? Fertilizers are plant nutrients. Fertilizers can be broken down into three major categories: primary, secondary, and micronutrients. And these categories are arranged based on the quantity of nutrients needed by plants. The primary nutrients, consisting of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, are needed by plants in the largest quantities. Secondary nutrients such as calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are needed by plants in moderate quantities, and the micronutrients such as iron, manganese, zinc, copper, and several others are needed in the smallest quantities. Of note, micronutrients are just as important as the primary nutrients because without them present in sufficient quantities, plant health can visibly suffer. Most fertilizer products fall into one of these four major categories established by federal and state regulators and the fertilizer industry: general purpose fertilizers, starter fertilizers, specialty fertilizers, and combination products. General purpose fertilizers are typically used for vegetable gardens, flowering plants, ornamentals, trees, or other general applications. General purpose fertilizers are not typically used on turf grass. Most general purpose fertilizers have the same N, P, and K analysis. So for example, you may have heard of a 10-10-10 or a 15-15-15. Those numbers simply mean there are equal parts of N, P, and K by weight inside a fertilizer bag. So for example, if you have a 50-pound bag of fertilizer and the analysis is a 10-10-10, that means 10% of that bag by weight is nitrogen, 10% is phosphorus, and 10% is potassium. And since 10% of 50 pounds is 5 pounds, that means that 5 pounds of nitrogen, 5 pounds of phosphorus, and 5 pounds of potassium are all present inside that 50-pound bag. Starter fertilizers are used for one thing only: growing plants in a starter situation. Planting a new lawn from seed or establishing a new lawn from sod are both examples of starter situations. What makes starter fertilizers unique is that they are very high in phosphorus. This is because young plants that are trying to establish and grow at a rapid rate require lots of phosphorus. The need for phosphorus diminishes significantly in most plants as they mature. And we'll talk more about phosphorus in just a few minutes. Now, two examples of starter fertilizers may be a 18-24-12 or a 24-25-4. Again, notice that the highest number in the analysis is phosphorus. Specialty fertilizers are used, by no coincidence, in specialty situations. For example, a specialty fertilizer might be intended for use only on turf or only on tropical and palm trees. Specialty fertilizers are usually phosphorus-free. Last, combination products are fertilizers that have been mixed or impregnated with control products. The control product could be an herbicide, insecticide, or fungicide. We'll talk more about control products later in this presentation. A classic example of a combination product would be a weed and feed, that is a fertilizer that also contains an herbicide. Now that we understand the categories in which nutrients are divided and the various categories fertilizer products fall under, let's spend a few minutes learning about the raw ingredients that comprise fertilizer. Did you know that most nutrients aren't packaged in their pure elemental forms? They are derived from natural and synthetic chemicals. Take, for example, nitrogen. Urea is the most commonly used source of nitrogen in fertilizer blends. However, urea is not pure nitrogen. One molecule of urea contains carbon, oxygen, and some hydrogen. So why is urea such a popular nitrogen source? Because it's relatively inexpensive to manufacture. Pure urea has an analysis of 4600, which means one molecule of urea is 46% nitrogen by weight. That's pretty good. Ammonium sulfate is another example of a commonly used nitrogen source in fertilizer blends, but ammonium sulfate is only 21% nitrogen by weight. So why would anyone want to use ammonium sulfate when urea is a better option? Perhaps the end user has a sulfur deficiency in their soil. Ammonium sulfate is 24% sulfur by weight, and urea has no sulfur at all. Let's look at phosphorus for a few seconds. The two most common sources of phosphorus in fertilizers are monoammonium phosphate, often called MOP, and diammonium phosphate, often called DAP. Note that both raw ingredients are also sources of nitrogen. Common sources of potassium include muriate of potash, often called MOP, and sulfate of potash, often called SOP. Both of these raw materials are great sources of potassium. The only difference is one molecule contains chlorine and the other contains sulfur. Last, organic substances can be a great source of primary, secondary, and micronutrients. Examples of organic substances include manure, compost, biosolids, humic substances, and kelp meal or extract. We'll talk more about organic substances later in this presentation.